Hello and welcome. My name is Stan Lemons, and you are here with us at the Expanding College Opportunity Speaker Series. It's part of the secrettowriting.com's ongoing series where we invite speakers from all over the country, educators, admissions officers, administrators, to help you with the college admissions process and all things college. So today, I am so excited to have a guest from the Juilliard School in New York, Dr. Kathleen Tizar. She is the Associate Dean for Enrollment Management at Juilliard. And on behalf of all of us at thesecrettowriting.com, it is really a pleasure to have you with us, Dr. Tizar. And so what we'll do today is I will be quiet for a moment and let Dr. Tizar introduce herself, and then she has a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation. So we'll flip over to that, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of have a round robin, a coffee table chat where I will ask questions. I took notes from all of you with some of your questions, so I will ask some of those, and then I encourage you as well that to type your questions in the chat as we go along. Now we'll look at the chat after Dr. Tizar goes through her presentation, because she will inevitably cover a lot of questions that you might have. But I do want to encourage you, and so just to let you know that you have that capability. So with that said, I want to take advantage of all our time and the opportunity that we have with Dr. Tizar, and I will pause here and turn to her and ask, can you please take 3 to 5 minutes, or however long you wish, to introduce yourself? Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here talking to you. It's evening where I am, so good evening, and good part of the day wherever you are. So I was trained as a violinist, and my first career was as an orchestral musician. So I played in orchestras for 15 years. And then I went into administration. So at Juilliard, my role is to oversee both the admissions and the financial aid offices. So I'm very familiar with music auditions, music admissions, but at Juilliard, we also have dance and drama acting. So we admit students in all those programs, and my job is to make sure that that whole process runs smoothly. And having come from a family where there were a lot of kids and my parents were not musicians, I had to learn a lot about how all this worked. And so now I have the opportunity to talk to people like you and give you the information and make sure it's clear and that you understand, all these different nuances that if you're just starting your college search, you may not be too aware of. So I'm going to talk about that sort of thing in this presentation, hoping to give you solid information, not just about Juilliard, but really about the college application and audition process when you want to major in the performing arts.
That sounds terrific, and thank you for also clarifying that today's presentation, yes, Dr. Tizar is representing Juilliard, but really she's giving us the value and benefit of learning how the admissions process works for, if you're interested in the performing arts in a real general sense. So whether it's Juilliard or some other school, surely we will learn a lot. So if you want to, I guess, proceed with your PowerPoint. And thank you, by the way, for that introduction.
Sure. So I will be sharing my screen, and I will take you through the PowerPoint with a lot of information, and then you'll be able to ask any questions. So this should share my screen. Are you seeing the screen?
Yes.
And then the slideshow? So does everyone see that? Okay.
I think,
So,
yes.
okay, great. You already know who I am, so let's just jump right in. So I think the first step of the way is to understand the vocabulary. When you're looking at schools and trying to think of what the schools are telling you, you have to have some understanding of the vocabulary. And especially if any of you listening are not used to the American system, because I understand we have people from all around the world. So this will help you as you look at different schools. So we will talk about the schools, but also the degrees and the types of majors. When I give this presentation, I make 3 general types of schools. So 3 very general categories. There's no right or wrong, but it helps to understand what you're getting into. A university, we hear that term a lot. Universities are very large, and within them they have multiple schools. So you could go to a school of music or a school of dance or a school of theater at a university. You could also go to a school of medicine or a school of dentistry or a school of education. So a university will have many different schools. As an undergraduate, you will typically be at the university studying in a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science program, which I will define shortly. The second type of school, the college, again, this is a word that we use in a very large sense. I'm going to college. I just came home from college. It's on, college break. But specifically, there is a thing called a college, which is about a medium-sized institution. It's focused on liberal arts undergraduate curricula. So it's not as large as a university. And instead of having multiple schools, a college might have multiple departments. So you might have a department of music, a department of liberal arts. You might have these different departments. And then the smallest type of school, when you're interested in the performing arts, is the conservatory, which Juilliard is a conservatory. So these types of schools are very small. They might be independent. In other words, they're not part of a university, and they are focused on the art form. So if you go to a conservatory of dance, everyone there is focused on dance. If you go to a conservatory of music, everyone there is focused on music. So these are very broad categories, but it will help you as you go to websites, read about schools, and understand kind of what you're getting into. The next layer down is the type of degree. So the degree is your program of study, and it is the credential that you get at the end of your studies. So if you're applying for undergraduate, in some parts of the world, this is called first cycle, you will typically find in the US these 4 degrees that I listed here. So there's a Bachelor of Arts degree, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Music, Bachelor of Fine Arts. And with these degrees, what they're defining is kind of the broader category. So a Bachelor of Arts degree is a liberal arts degree, liberal arts being the reading, writing types of classes. So like literature or French, those would be liberal arts classes. A Bachelor of Science degree focuses on science, so biology or physics, those would be BS degrees. A Bachelor of Music obviously focuses on music. A BFA might be in music, but more often you find BFAs with dance, with drama or theater, and also with the arts like painting, sculpting, those arts. So both the BM and the BFA are professional degrees. And this means that most of your education is focused on your art form. So for example, if you are doing a Bachelor of Music degree program, 75 to 80% of your studies will be in music. So that might be your lessons, it might be orchestra, might be chamber music, it'll be music theory, oral skills. These are things that you will focus on in your BM degree or your BFA degree. And you will also have like one liberal arts class per semester. So again, you're spending about 75% of your time focused on the art form and 25% focused on liberal arts. If you were in a BA degree, it's a liberal arts degree, and it's the opposite. You're going to spend 60% or 70% of your time in the liberal arts. So even if you're doing a BA in theater or a BA in music or dance, you're only doing about a third of your time in that art discipline. And so the question to ask as you're looking at schools is, what is the balance between your art and your other classes? And a different way of asking that question is, what do you want the balance to be? So do you want to spend a lot of your time focused on dance or acting or music, or do you want to spend more of your time on the liberal arts side? We include the Bachelor of Science degree first because it's a very common degree, but also because there might be something within the arts that you are very interested in, but would not be an artistic degree. For example, if you're interested in acoustic science, the science of designing performance spaces, that might be a BS degree. If you're interested in audio recording, BS degree, possibly. If you are interested in like lighting design for the theater, again, that's probably a BS degree. So when you're looking at different schools and you see these different names of the degrees, you don't be scared. You know, like if it says Bachelor of Science and you're like, well, I'm not so sure that's what I want, but at least you understand that a BS is different from a BA. The next level down is the type of major. So the major is your area of focus. So a lot of people get a Bachelor of Music degree, but some people major in piano performance. Some people major in clarinet performance. Some people major in composition. So the area of focus is where a lot of your studies are concentrated. So if you're a violin major, you're not going to be taking dance classes, right? So I put some examples here of performing arts majors, but you will find lots of variation, lots of different types of majors in the performing arts. And again, part of your job is to think about what you want. You know, what is the thing you want to do when you finish your schooling, and then find the school that will train you that way. You don't just go in and say, you know, I'll go to this school and it'll teach me something. You have to go in with an idea of what that something is. And what's particularly important is that in the performing arts, your major is driving the admissions process. By that, I mean, if you apply to a university or a college, not as a performing arts major, you might have a year or even two to decide what your major will be. And the schools are designed that way so that you take various courses, and like you might be interested in one thing, but as you take different courses, you become interested in another subject, and you have time to decide what you want to do. If you're going to major in the performing arts, so if your area of focus is in the performing arts, whether it's music or dance or acting, there are going to be requirements on the front end, up front, requirements that you have to fulfill in order to even apply. And that's different from just applying to the school, being admitted, and then figuring out what you want to do. So in general, when you're applying to college, you have these three boxes, okay? You have to apply. A school cannot admit you if you're not an applicant. So you complete the application, whatever the requirements are. Then the school has some sort of admissions committee, which will discuss who should be admitted. And then the school will tell you their decision. And if you are admitted, you have to make your decision as to whether or not you will enroll there. So that's the general process for any university, any major, any degree program: the application, the committee, and then deciding what the result is. But when you're applying to the performing arts, you are going to have an audition at some point. If you are majoring in the performing arts, again, dance, drama, theater, music, you're going to have to, as part of your application, take an audition. You might have to also submit pre-screening, which is like a first round in order to be invited to the audition. So when you're majoring in the performing arts, you have these steps you have to go through as part of the application. There are some schools, if you're not a major in the performing arts, maybe you're going to a liberal arts college where you're going to do a BA in theater or dance or music, then you'll be admitted, and at that point they will ask you to audition. And lastly, you may not be a performing arts major, but after you're admitted to the school, you might have an audition because you're not a major, but you want to take music lessons, or you want to participate in dance classes or acting classes. So you'll find variations in this process. But if you really want to focus on one of the performing arts, all of those requirements are going to be driven by your major and will be part of the application process. So when schools make decisions, if you've applied to a college or a university and you're talking about being a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science student at one of those schools, they're going to weigh everything equally. So the admissions committee will look at your test scores. They will look at your recommendations, your resume, your essays, your transcripts. All of those things together result in the school making a decision, the decision being, should we admit this applicant or not? But when you're applying in the performing arts, I had said, the audition is where all the weight is. The audition is part of the application process. And there's so much weight on the audition that everything else you've sent in, so you've sent in recommendations and test scores and resume and essays and transcripts, all of those are looked at after the audition process. So the weight of the application and audition process is always towards the audition if you're majoring in one of the performing arts. Now, if you don't want to major in music or dance, this is music, but also dance or theater, but you're applying to school not in the performing arts, then focus on your academic classes, get a strong grade point average, maybe take some advanced placement classes and have good test scores in the SAT or ACT tests. If you're not a native English speaker, you also want to make sure you have really strong English language proficiency test scores. So if you're not a performing arts major, your art form still may be part of your school attendance, but as an extracurricular activity outside of your requirements. The audition is not weighing into the school's decision. So the decision is going to be more focused on the academics and all the pieces of the application. If you want to major in music or dance or acting, theater, you have to research the audition requirements ahead of time, and you need to focus on preparing for the audition. You want solid grades, but you don't have to go all out for heavy academics because so much of the emphasis is going to be on your audition. This is a tip for organizing your application requirements. So every school requires different things, and every school has different deadlines. So the worst mistake you can make at this point is to assume that everything's the same for every school, because it's not. Different schools want different materials from you because they evaluate differently. On this little spreadsheet, down the side, I put the different requirements, and then across the top, I have different schools. This helps you see right away what you have to deal with. So, school 1 has an application deadline of November 1st for priority. Everyone else is December 1st. So if you're a student right now who wants to start college, that next level, next fall, you have a December 1st deadline. So that's not a made up deadline. Juilliard has a December 1st deadline. Curtis has a December 1st deadline. The University of Southern California, they have December 1st deadline. So you have to make sure that you have done your research, and this is how you keep track. the schools will require an essay, but some only require one essay, some require two. A letter of recommendation is often requested. Some schools require one, some two, some even three. I will say for Juilliard, we have a requirement for our music students. It's different for dance and drama, but our music students have to submit an artistic recommendation and also an academic recommendation. And that gets very confused. So you, as the applicant, would ask one of your classroom teachers to recommend you, and the classroom teacher tells us you're a great dancer. That is not an academic recommendation. And so you have to make sure that you tell your recommender what they need to do, what they're writing the recommendation for. And the academic recommendation specifically is for us to know that if we admit you, you're going to do all right in your academic classes. So the fact that you're a fantastic pianist, for example, or a fantastic jazz drummer will not outweigh poor academics. So it's an important thing to think of. And then also on my sample spreadsheet here, I put in audition dates. So I would have some idea of which schools are auditioning when. And as you get firm dates, you can add those to your spreadsheet. You also want to organize your audition requirements. So I was saying, that if you're going to major in the performing arts, you will have to audition, and the schools have different requirements. This example here is specific to an undergraduate voice applicant. So someone who wants to major in classical voice. So pre-screening, that's a preliminary round where you send in a recording. 2 of these 4 schools require that you send in a pre-screening recording, and they have different due dates. So one school wants the recording by November 1st, the other school by December 1st. Schools 2 and 4 do not require pre-screening. The pre-screening recording that you have to make is what gets you invited to the audition. So there's specific requirements for each school. If you look at this, you see that school 1 requires 3 pieces in different styles and different languages. School 3 is more specific. So you would look at this and think, wow, I'm going to have to do 6 pieces. But actually, the more specific requirements for school 3 can be used also for school 1. So you really only have 3 pieces to put together. For the audition rep, schools 1 and 3 here have the same repertoire as pre-screening. So you've already learned that repertoire. And then the other 2 schools have broad enough requirements that the same 3 pieces will work for those other schools. So it looks like, 3 pieces times 4 schools, and you have to learn 12 pieces. But that's not true. You really can you can actually do only 3, and it will cover all the requirements. So when you put it all on a spreadsheet like this, you are able to be strategic, and you will also be less stressed because you will be more organized. When you are choosing your repertoire, so whatever your performing arts area, don't choose the hardest rep, because at the audition you will probably be somewhat nervous. But don't choose the easiest rep either, because the faculty will know that it's the easy stuff, and they'll be like, why didn't they do something more advanced? Okay. What you want to do is show off your strengths. So if you're an actor, choose monologues that show off your strengths. If you're a dancer, choose a solo that really shows you off what you do, your technique and your artistry and your versatility. You don't want everything to be the same style. You want to make sure that the works you choose fit with the repertoire requirements, but also are different from each other. And if you have a teacher or a coach of some kind, make sure you check with them that you're doing appropriate repertoire that will allow you to show off. And if you are applying right now to start college next year, you should already have all your rep chosen, your pre-screening rep, your audition rep. If you haven't, you don't have much time, and that will put a great deal of stress on you. This is contact information for Juilliard. So we have a general admissions email, and then we have specific emails for dance admissions, drama admissions, and music admissions. And then I also put in our website at the bottom if you want to go take a moment to take a screenshot of this if you are interested in Juilliard. I will say that schools spend a great deal of time putting information on our websites, and it's interesting that so many students will go right to contacting us without even looking at the website. And there's so much information there that if you go to the school's website, any school, not just Juilliard, you will find so much information. You will find the, if pre-screening is required, what is the rep? You'll find that on the website. You will find the audition rep on the website. You'll find the audition dates on the website. So it's very important that you do your research and that you take the time to organize yourself so that you can be ready for anything that comes up, okay? So we're going to move to questions, and I will stop sharing my screen. So click to exit. Let's see. There we go.
Well, that was great, Dr. Caesar, by the way.
Sure. And of course, there's lots and lots of questions that can be asked. And so I can give a ton of information. So tell me what we should dig into.
Sure. And so before we get started at this point, but let me again remind the audience that if you have questions, please type them in the chat and we will look at those. And I will just start us off with some questions that I have and some of the questions that you all sent in. But I will say I was really struck by a thought that came to me rather as you were talking. So I'm imagining a student who's 17, 18 years old and sort of making the decision to go to a school, a conservatory, for example, as opposed to a college or a university, where if you go to a conservatory, from what I've learned here, it seems to me that you're really focused, you're really making the decision that this is what I want to study, I know for sure, and perhaps there are, in terms of the long-term goals, I don't know what those would be, but it seems like there's a real clear path, as opposed to your general 17-year-old that's just like, oh, I'm ready to go to college, I'm just going to be at school. So with that sort of lead in, as you as an admissions officer, as you're looking at applicants, how do you counsel someone at that age to kind of know whether or not a conservatory versus a college is the better fit, just given sort of where a young person is in their life? That was a long kind of question, but hopefully you can parse through some of that opening and help.
Well, I remember very distinctly when I was in high school thinking, I'm supposed to make this decision now, and that's going to be the next 60 years of my life. I mean, I really remember thinking that and going, that's nuts, that's nuts. But
Right.
at the same time, I loved playing the violin. I just loved it. And I had already had experiences, because you don't major in one of the performing arts with no previous experience. So people who come to, apply to conservatories like Juilliard, there's already experience. And I knew I loved playing in the orchestra. So I knew that even while I was saying to myself, do I want to be stuck in this, role for the rest of my life? And life did not let me get stuck in that role, but that's a different story. We won't go into that story. But for the time that I was a professional musician working in an orchestra, I loved it. So the students who are really going the very focused route in majoring in the performing arts, you know this, like this is the thing you want to do. And sometimes that's hard for parents to follow, because it's like, well, I'm not a dancer, I'm not a violinist, I'm not a actor, so I don't get why my child wants to do this. And I don't even know if I should support them in their decision, because my goodness, what, like my dad, like either my daughter's going to be standing on a street corner, with her case open, hoping people will throw money in, but that's not what happens. And one of the things that it helps to be aware of is when you have a bachelor's degree, you have a bachelor's degree. And the bachelor's degree gives you access to master's degree, because you can't just get a master's degree. You have to have a bachelor's degree first. So in a way, your bachelor's degree, it doesn't matter what it's in. Once you have that 4-year degree, you have that degree. So there are musicians, for example, I knew someone who was a flute performance major, and she injured her hands and could not play flute. She went to law school. So she did her undergrad in flute, and then she went to law school. And people said to her, "You're not going to get into law school. You have a music degree." But the thing is that as she was in her music degree, she was practicing, she had to manage her time. She had to be disciplined enough to practice every day. She had to be smart enough to do her music theory homework, to research her music history papers. I mean, there were all these things she was doing that are just part of getting a bachelor's degree, and so any bachelor's degree you get, you're going to be writing papers, you're going to have to be disciplined and do your homework and come to class prepared. You can choose not to. That's not going to help you very much down the road. But the point is that if you have that bachelor's degree, even if it's in acting, say, you have done that discipline. You have earned that degree. That's why we say earn. It's not just handed to you. You spend 4 years earning it. So maybe it doesn't work out in your life to be a violinist for the rest of your life, or to be an actor for the rest of your life. But the fact is that you have earned that bachelor's degree, and that's worth a lot of life skill and experience, and it can be applied in multiple areas. So it's never a waste to get a bachelor's degree, even if it's in the performing arts, which is, again, the thing that makes parents nervous. What will my child do? Well, it's not going to look like getting a job at the bank and working from 8 to 5 every day. If you're in the performing arts, it's going to be much different than that. But still, why would you not try if this is the thing you're passionate about? Because if nothing else, you will earn that bachelor's degree, and that will open doors to other things.
Perhaps as to dovetail from there, I mean, I could, let's say I have an interest in the performing arts. I could go to a university and pursue the performing arts, but yet there are conservatories. What's the value if I'm weighing the two? What's the value of going to a performing arts school?
When you go to a conservatory, you are surrounded by people as passionate as you are about this very narrow area. So, you let's say you play trumpet and you go to a conservatory, the other trumpet players are on fire. Everyone's on fire to be a trumpet player, a professional. And so that very fact supports your own goals, right? So that's like one of the things about Juilliard. When people think it's competitive, it's not competitive like I have to do better than you. It's competitive like everyone here is so good, I'd better get good at what I'm doing. That's a different type of competition, right? So when you're at the conservatory and you have that focus, you also have that peer group. When I talk to students who say, well, I have an interest in in playing piano, but I also have an interest in science, and I have an interest in business. It's like, then you should go to a college or a university, because you will have access to all those different pieces of things that you're interested in. If you go to a conservatory, you're not going to have that kind of breadth of choice. And so you have to, again, look at yourself and say, what do I want to do? You know, you might double up. You might say, I'm going to do 2 degrees. I'll do one in music and one in business, for example. Okay, you probably cannot do that at a conservatory. So that's why you have to do your own research and you have to do your own introspection to see the things that you want and the schools that will give you what you want, the skills you want to do your thing. So it's not that a conservatory is better than a university for a music education or an artist, dance education or acting education. It's what do you want to come with that education.
Mm-hmm. Understood. In terms of the academic side of a conservatory, and I'm saying, I know you're representing one school versus all the other ones out there, but there's the audition that's on the front end, and then there's sort of the evaluation of a candidate from an academic standpoint and all the other elements that go into the process. But can you, in terms of profiles and a lot of schools have on their websites, and they'll show the average SAT or ACT score, average GPA, and so on, and it kind of gives the candidate, the applicant, a sense of the competitiveness, whether the school is considered highly selective, particularly from an academic standpoint. How does that work really in this case at Juilliard, and we can perhaps extrapolate for other schools, but if you can.
I love that question. I've not encountered it before. I would say that you would look at what the students who graduate do. So that's one part of the answer. So people at Juilliard get into the New York Phil, the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. But I also know that people at other schools have the same success. It's just like, is it one success or is it years and years and years of that success where the students get jobs in the fields they trained in? Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another thing you can do really easily now is see what performances the school has, and COVID gave us the ability to live stream. So that was actually a positive thing that came out of COVID. And so you can go to a school's website and see, is there anything being live streamed this week? So if you're interested in dance, are they live streaming a dance performance? If you're interested in tuba, is there a tuba recital that you can watch? And that gives you an idea of what the students do and how advanced the students are. So it's not the equivalent of, the average SAT score is this or that, but it will give you some idea of where you are in comparison to where the students are who are already at the school.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Jada from New York, and Jada, I'm not going to mention your last name. I won't put you on blast like that, but you asked an excellent question, and Dr. Tissot touched on the importance of the audition. But Jada asks, how can you stand out in your audition? So she wants to know, like, hey, I'm going to come there and I'm going to do this, and I won't pick the easiest thing. See, I listened to you. I won't pick the easiest thing, but I won't pick the most difficult element. But I want to stand out. So how can Jada do that?
This question comes up a lot, and I think I'm going to disappoint you with my answer. In a way, you don't want to stand out. In other words, you can show up at your audition wearing a hot pink sequin jumpsuit and you will stand out, but that won't convince anyone that you should be admitted. Again, if you think of that picture of the balance, and the audition is all on one side and then the other things are on the other side, the way you stand out is preparing and performing your audition to the best of your ability. So the faculty who are listening and evaluating you, do not expect perfection. If you were perfect, you A, would not be human, but B, you would not be able to, there would be no need to go to school, right? Because you'd be so advanced, there's nothing you could learn. You go to a school, any school, to learn something, and to learn something that you want to learn. You know, high school, like, you may not want to learn biology, but you're going to have to take biology. Sorry. You know, in college, you have much more freedom to say, I want to learn this one thing. I'm going to focus on this thing. And all the learning you do supports you. So the faculty are sitting there saying to themselves, here's the applicant is auditioning. What am I seeing? Am I seeing artistic conviction? Am I feeling an emotional response to what they're doing? That shows that you understand what the composer or choreographer or playwright intended, and you can take what they intended and you can convey it to the faculty. So they're sitting there asking themselves, how is this applicant conveying to me the intent of the author, so to speak, of what they're doing? They're saying, how much further can I take this applicant? Okay, so your job is to show off yourself at your best right now. That is your job. You are showing off. You are not trying to be perfect. You are not trying to be better than you are. You are showing them yourself in a very real and honest way. Here's how I play this Chopin etude. This is me playing Chopin. And then if I go to play Bach, it should sound different than Chopin, and it should move the faculty differently. So what they really love is saying, I can do more with that student. That student has so much going for them. They have some, good basic technique. They have artistic conviction. I really want to work with that student. Let's recommend that student for admission. So you can control your preparation and your experience, and that's your job. And then you walk into the audition room and say, this is it. This is me. This is my preparation. This is my experience. It may not be perfect, but that the faculty are not looking for perfection. So that is, in the end, how you stand out. You stand out by showing your true self and what you have to bring to the art form at this moment in time. And then you let the faculty make their decision about you in the context of all the applicants that particular year. So nothing else matters, again, if you're majoring in the performing arts, except that audition. You stand out by having a convincing and accurate audition. And that's all you need to do. You don't need to be fancy. You don't need to, I've had people say, well, I have this interesting interpretation of this particular piece. It's like, we don't want interesting. The required repertoire is there because it demonstrates certain standard things. Don't go demonstrating something that's not standard, because that's not the moment when you do that. That's something you do as you develop, but the audition is not that point. So don't get fancy. Just perform a really good audition, and you'll stand out that way.
I must say, I'm still stuck on the hot pink description that you gave, but I'm going to move away from that, and I do appreciate that response. We have a number of international students that are with us today. Can you offer advice, guidance beyond what you already have to students that are applying from abroad? Even in terms of the audition, I mean, how does that work?
Right. Well, the bottom line is the same. You have to take the audition, and you have to prepare the required materials for the audition, and you're going to have the same audition as everyone else. It might be a different modality. So some schools might allow you to send a recording. Some schools might allow you to do a Zoom audition. Each school will make its own choices. I will say at Juilliard, if you get invited to an audition, you have to come to New York to audition. Then you're in front of our faculty and they can evaluate you. So we don't actually give you much choice in that. But the treatment, the things we expect from any applicant is these things are the same. It doesn't matter where you come from. The one difference with two differences with international students. So if you're not a US citizen, you cannot get US government money. So students who are US citizens fill out something called the FAFSA, and that gives them access to US government funding. So the US government won't fund someone who's not a US citizen or permanent resident. So that's one difference. The other difference is if English is not your native language, you will have to submit some sort of proof of English language proficiency, typically TOEFL, IELTS, PTE, Cambridge, any of those tests, and each school will have different standards and will allow different tests. So those are the two main differences if you're not a US citizen. But the audition requirement is not going to change just because your citizenship is not within the US.
Okay, I got it. So, all right. So what happens if I'm a wonderfully talented student that lives in, thousands of miles away from a family that does not have sort of a lower income family? Maybe the student is a prospective first generation college student, but yet, at the same time, this fantastic violinist or dancer, so on, is how can that student access Juilliard? I mean, how does that work?
So on the application side, there are two pieces on the application side to think about. One is that Juilliard and pretty much every other school I know of offers application fee waivers. Okay, so we put ours in 3 different places just so people will read it. They don't always read it, but this is why you have to read the application and read the website. But we say, if you have a financial hardship, request an application fee waiver. And if it doesn't say that on a school's application, contact them and ask. Say, I cannot afford the application fee. Can I have a waiver? And the school, again, each school is probably different, but the school will tell you how you do that for that school. Okay, so that's one thing. Another thing that happens with people in particular who are under-resourced, or even those who are fairly resourced, they look at the cost of attendance. So this is a thing that schools in the US must post on their websites. So we have to add up our tuition cost, our cost for housing, our cost for food, and our estimated costs for things like travel and books and all that. And we have to post that number on the website. That number is ridiculous, okay? At pretty much every school, that number is ridiculous. If you have very few resources, it doesn't matter if it's $10,000 cost of attendance or $80,000 cost of attendance. The mistake students make is saying, I can't afford it. Well, no, you can't afford that. But if you don't apply, you will not get any money to help you afford it. And so you have to do this leap of faith where you say, I'm really talented and I think I can go to school X, Y, or Z. So I'm going to apply and see what happens. And maybe at the end, everything's paid for and you go to that school, or maybe you have to choose a different school because you still can't afford the school you wanted to go to. But you won't know that unless you apply and audition and get admitted. So that's another thing. I will speak specifically now for Juilliard. We are very fortunate this year and last year to have a grant that allows us to give some travel stipends to people, but it's after the fact. So if you qualify for an application fee waiver, you may qualify for some travel support. So, like, let's say your plane ticket is $500, maybe we're able to help you with $300, something like that. So we're trying to do that, and I think
to the audition. You're referring to that you may be able to help in order to come to an audition.
Correct.
Okay.
Because you
Sorry.
you can't get into the school if you don't audition, and if you can't afford to come to the audition, you're caught in a catch-22. So we do that, and I think some other schools are starting to do that as well.
Okay. Very good. So I'm looking at the time. I'm looking at the chat. I have a ton of questions. I don't see questions in the chat. So if they're Dr. Teaser, if you don't, then I'll just keep going with my questions. And again, I'm also referencing questions that you, the audience, have sent in. Let's talk to both students and parents. So students first. If you're talking to middle school students, a middle school student, and maybe a high school student, what advice would you give that student in terms of preparing for a performing arts college, middle school or high school?
So the main purpose, so remember that the weight of admission is going to fall on the audition. And so in order to best prepare, you have to have the artistic training, okay? So you might like start playing flute in your middle school band. Eventually you will need a flute teacher to take one-on-one lessons. You will need to be in some program where there is someone who can teach you and bring you along further on the flute. Because when you go to audition, there are going to be requirements of pieces you have to prepare. And if you've not been trained, you won't be able to prepare those pieces, okay? So that kind of access to training is important. For example, if you're a dancer and you want to apply to Juilliard, you have to have at least 3 years of ballet training, because that's the foundation on which all the other dancing will be built. So you have to find access. There are quite a few programs now that are taking more, or are giving more awareness to under-resourced students and the kind of support they need. If you have a lot of resources, it's easy to find dance classes, right? It's harder if you're under-resourced. So how do you find those resources? The answer might vary from city to city. But for example, there are things called pathways programs in music. These tend to be very small programs. And if you audition and are selected, you are committed to that program. You are committed to taking lessons every week. You are committed to going to summer programs. You are committed to like a local orchestra, like a youth orchestra or something. There are very strict commitments required of you in a Pathways program, and yet they also provide the resources for you. So it's giving you a leg up because you wouldn't have the resources otherwise. So these programs are growing in size around the country. I know of 10 offhand already that have this mission of helping students. They are music programs. You might find like community art schools, like in New York, Harlem School of the Arts, fabulous community school. So it's not something you do during the day. It's the thing you do after school and on weekends. They have dance, they have acting, they have music. I mean, it's a fantastic community school. And so you could find a school like that in your community and attend that school to get some of this preliminary training. So those are some of the tips I would say for someone who wants to major in the arts but needs help with preparation.
Okay. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So I, for one, am, I work with students applying to college, and I talk to them, and I go around and I give presentations and so on. And I will say that there's always sort of intense conversation with parents and students about applying to college, or regardless, whatever kind of school it is, whatever post-secondary type of education a student might choose to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, can you talk for a moment directly to parents and offer any tips, advice, words of wisdom to a parent, as that parent helps their child with considering a performing arts school or pursuing higher education in general? Just in other words, can you help the parent out a little bit? What would you say?
I remember my dad, when I said, I want to major in music, and he's, okay. And the next day he was on the phone to my violin teacher saying, what do I do? What do I do? You know, he was like panicked because I wanted to do something that he didn't know anything about. And he didn't know how it would work. He didn't know how I would survive. And he wanted me to do well, you know, and most parents, that's exactly where you're at. You want your child to do well. But this is where you're starting to let go a bit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So as a parent, you know, you've been putting all this stuff into your child, you know, all the strengths, all the beliefs of your family, whatever those are, you've been putting that into your child. Now your child has to start stepping away and making their decisions. So supporting your child, just saying it's okay. You know, it's okay for you to follow your dream. It's okay for you to do something different than what I did. It's okay for you to try this thing and to go off to college and to, you know, learn more about yourself and to develop a career, whatever that career is. So to me, having the knowledge of that parental support is just so strengthening to the student. You know, this does not mean be a stage parent. Stage parents do not help their students. Stage parents, you know, the stage parents are the ones who do all the talking, and the student isn't saying anything because it's what the parent wants, not the student wants. What you have to do as a parent is coach yourself to hear what the student is saying, to actually understand that this is coming from somewhere deep inside them, and that's a good thing. All right, your students are not you, they are not replicating you. So how can you help them be more themselves? Because ideally, you know, we live our lives and hopefully at the end we become more ourselves and not less ourselves. So helping your child take those first steps is like the best and most loving thing you can do, I think. You know, just saying, okay, I mean, you know, like my dad sending me, you know, a check, you know, for $10 just so I could, you know, go to a movie or something. Well, maybe it's more than that now. But back then,
Right.
you know, just knowing that every now and then, like he would send me greeting cards, you know, my mom
Right.
would send me, you know, a little bit of this here and there. And it's just like they're there somewhere behind me, helping me, you know, supporting me, but not living my life for me. And so I don't know if that's too esoteric for parents that I'm talking to now, but having lived through this myself, I think that's really, really valuable.
I think that was beautifully said, and thank you for that. And as a final, it's not even so much a final question. It really is. I'd like to give you kind of your sort of last words for our presentation, and then I'll close us out, and we'll call it a wrap. So any parting thoughts or anything you want to close with?
If you don't try, you do not have a chance. And that goes for so much in life. If you say, well, I think it's too hard to get in college, so I won't try. I think it's too hard to audition for Juilliard, so I won't try. I think it's too hard to get that job, so I won't try. You have to try, because it's in the putting yourself out there and the trying that you have room for growth. So if you try and you don't succeed, you shouldn't be curling up in a corner saying, I didn't succeed. You should be saying, how can I do better next time? And so it's the trying that creates the artist. And I think that would be a great final word.
I agree. That is very well said, and thank you so much for that. And really, I want to thank you, Dr. Tizar, for giving us of your time, your wisdom, your experience. This has been so valuable and so helpful. So I want to thank you for that, and you as a representative of Juilliard. I want to thank the school as well. There's no wonder your school is such a renowned place, and yet you're so willing and open in making yourself available to people, to help people, whether a student wants to go to Juilliard or any school, any other performing arts school, or for that matter, college. So to our attendees, I want to thank you for joining us. I appreciate your taking the time to participate. I certainly hope that our time together has been beneficial to you. I know I learned a lot, and I trust that you have as well. So on behalf of the secrettowriting.com organization and the Expanding College Opportunity Speaker Series, please come back. We have other events coming up. Just check out our website. And with that, I wish you all well. Dr. Teaser, have a great evening. And to our guests, you too have a great evening, or wherever you are, morning or afternoon. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.